This week, I am sharing an interview with Matt Lhoumeau, CEO of Concord Worldwide, which is a global contract management system. Matt is a serial entrepreneur who started 3 companies in his career. Matt also served as a speechwriter in the 2007 French presidential campaign for Nicolas Sarkozy. During our discussion, Matt describes the state of contract management with a great vision for the future, along with excellent finance leadership tips for startup companies. Please enjoy the episode. Welcome to the Finance Leader Podcast, where leadership is bigger than the numbers. I'm your host, Stephen McLean. This is the podcast for developing leaders in finance and accounting. Please consider following me on Twitter, Facebook, Instagram, and LinkedIn. My usernames and the links are in this episode's show notes. Thank you. This is episode number 136. Now let's get right to the discussion with Matt. It's amazing. Please enjoy. I want to welcome Matt Lhoumeau to the Finance Leader Podcast. Matt is the co-founder and CEO of Concord, a leading contract management platform used by over 100,000 companies worldwide. He founded his first company at 17, an online gaming community later acquired by Orange. Matt is a recognized industry leader, frequently speaking at events like Stanford's Codex and the CLOC conference. Matt, thank you so much for joining me today. We want to hear more about you, so please tell us about yourself.
Hi there. Very nice to be here to tell you more about myself. What should I start with? I am French, as I guess everyone would guess by my accent very quickly. I've been in the US now for about 10 years. As you mentioned, I actually built my first company as a young teenager. I was 17 when I built a website about video games at the time. And that's kind of where I got the bug of building companies. I ended up after this company studying a lot of different things. I studied Japanese, international affairs, political science, went to a business school. At that time I was searching myself, hesitating between becoming a diplomat, a poet, or an entrepreneur. I realized that poet was not a job, and so I should probably find something else. And that diplomacy was great, but I was probably not patient enough to work in administration.
Okay.
So I settled for entrepreneurship. And so I had the chance to work for some amazing people back in France. I spent a year working for the former French president, Nicolas Sarkozy.
Yes.
I was part of the 10-people team who wrote all these speeches and policies when he got elected in 2007, working directly with the chief of staff. And then I spent a year working for the CEO and for the founder of the second biggest telecom company in France. And that's actually when I kind of ended up working with contracts. At that time, we just bought a competitor. The competitor was losing a lot of money, so I was tasked to renegotiate the contracts we had with some of the vendors. And I quickly realized at that time that everything was done manually. We were back in 2009 at the time. Yeah. $6 billion revenue company and contracts being in paper, in cabinet.
Right.
And you know how it is. You end up spending a month just looking for the contracts in the file cabinets of the company. And then you spend another month just reading them one by one. And then you spend 4 months sending Word documents back and forth to hundreds of people to renegotiate the terms of these contracts.
Right.
And that's basically how I ended up building Concord with that idea of trying to make sure no one will have to go through what I went through about 15 years ago.
Yeah, exactly. Hey, please describe more about Concord, your premium service, and how it benefits your customers.
Yeah, absolutely. So Concord is Concord.app is basically a contract management platform really focused on the SMB and mid-market. So typically, if you have between 100 to 1,000 employees, you typically are the right people to use Concord. Our platform is really focused on what I would describe as the CLM, contract lifecycle management, for the post-legal world. What do I mean by this? What's been very interesting about the last few years is we've seen a massive shift in companies, especially in SME market, about the way they manage their contracts. Back in the days, if I tell you contracts, you immediately think about legal. This is going to be the lawyers of the company managing this, etc. Mm-hmm. What we've seen over the past few years, and it's accelerating right now significantly with AI, is that smaller, medium-sized companies, lower enterprise companies actually do not manage their contracts through legal teams. Who is managing the contracts today in these companies? Operations, finance, and
Right.
legal is quite often not even involved anymore whatsoever. And quite often we actually see these companies that don't even have legal teams at all. I
Okay.
was last week with a customer here in Texas. We're based in Austin, Texas. We have a customer. There's a 300 people company. They've been around for 70 years. Very traditional company in construction, and they don't have a legal team anymore. They've outsourced everything. And so
Wow.
what's interesting is we've seen that trend coming for the past few years now. And so we built Concord with that idea that this is not a CLM platform for legal teams. This is a CLM platform for everyone else. Obviously, legal teams also use Concord, but they're less and less involved in these contract management processes, which is a good thing because they have other things to do. Quite often, legal teams are very underfunded in a company. They have very little resources, and we ask them too much. And so the idea is let's take away from them the contract management administration. Approving for the 50th time the same contract is probably not something that someone should be spending time on. And let's just make sure they can focus on the real topics when it comes to their skill set, which is the legality of an agreement or things like this.
Right. So it sounds like the legal teams aren't really your typical customer using the service because so how does this service really benefit the CFOs out there?
Well, it all comes down to what a contract really is about at the end of the day. If you look at a contract today, about what we've seen in numbers on Concord.app, what we see is that more than 90% of contracts today are signed without any revisions from your third party. And so it kind of makes sense when you think about it, because what are the three main types of contracts you're going to find, right? HR documents, sales, and procurement, vendors agreements. That's very about 80% of the agreements that companies sign typically. Well, you're not going to negotiate really your offer letter, right? You're going to modify maybe obviously the amounts that are on there based on the person you hire, but you don't really have that kind of power when you get hired. When it comes to your sales agreement, if you sell something to your customers, I assume you probably have a template. And
Yes.
so you probably should not have to spend, a lot of money to renegotiate your agreement one by one. And then when it comes to your vendor agreements, well, quite often you don't really have that kind of power to negotiate the terms of services that you're working with. If tomorrow I sell a contract with Salesforce, I don't think I can really modify the contract that I have with them. The same way that, when you approve the terms of services on Apple Music, you can't really tell Apple to change that for you.
Right.
So what's interesting is that we've seen basically contracts today. Most of them are signed without any revisions, really. And so what does that mean? It means that at the end of the day, I think people start to realize that what's in your contract is not as important. Trying to negotiate things that in the end might never happen, given the amount of the contract, is probably not really worth their time. At the end of the day, if you sell a service for, let's call it $5,000 and your customer doesn't pay you, what are you going to do? Sue them? Probably not worth the money.
Right.
And so people started to realize that it's probably not as important compared to the past. And they started to realize that what contracts are really about is making sure you're getting them done. It's a business process, not a legal document. When you hire someone, you sell something to a customer, you want to put in place a new system from a vendor, you just want it to be done. And you want to be done, obviously, with some controls about who has approved this contract, making sure that what's in the contract is still okay. And that's where basically we can help. The idea is, the finance teams are going to be able to do this very quickly, have all the approvals in one place. They can check with AI the content of the contract, and they can just move forward. So it's just about making these teams just more efficient and getting things done.
Yeah, exactly. Because we've all dealt with contracts. Contracts go on for pages, and they have all these requirements that the vendor has to do, the one who's buying the service, or the supplies have to do. So you have to make sure you're tracking all of the due dates. What is due when does it have to pay? Your net 30 or whatever the terms you have to. And so your service comes in and helps you track and manage all those type of requirements that are in the contract that you may very well miss. Does that sound right?
Absolutely, absolutely, and I think that's the beauty of I think what's happening today, especially when it comes to AI. So we use AI on Concord.app to basically make sure that all your due dates, your life cycle, or your,
Yep.
your your payment terms are actually automatically extracted by the platform, and so you receive automatically your deadlines by email. You can we're building a new type of reporting right now to actually let you, as a finance leader, you'll be able, thanks to Concord, to actually get a forecast based on your contracts of your cash flows.
Oh,
So we'll be able
nice.
to tell you exactly month after month how much money is coming in and out of your contract based on your real contractual commitments, which is interesting because when we work on cash flows, I mean, but do this every day in my own company as a CEO, right? Quite often, how do you really evaluate that? Well, you kind of look at what you did last year and you kind of make your
Hmm.
projections for the following year,
Right.
but you don't necessarily have a place to track your real commitments here. And that's something that you can do with Concord. So I think the idea at the end of the day, specifically for a CFO, right? If you're a finance leader, what does that mean for you? You can just get things done faster with less resources. I think at the end of the day, that's
Oh,
the most
that's
important thing for a CFO, right?
exactly. That's
Uh,
it. You hit it right
it's
there.
efficiency. It's efficiency. And I think the second thing is really about being able to get a better control of your cost, your commitments in general, and making sure you're not missing something. I've never heard in my life a CFO telling me that they never lost money because they missed a renewal. It has happened to literally everyone.
Right.
And so that's the type of thing that we just also remove as a risk. Yeah.
Yeah. You know what? I wish that I had this service when I was serving in the Army. I was an auditor in Iraq for the U.S. Army, and we had to pour over. We not only I had to do audits of already completed contracts, which was pages and pages of requirements, and you're having to pour over it manually, but also looking at the various communications and documents that were going forth between the very high level commands and agencies that were in Iraq trying to support the mission that we had over there. I literally were going over using Control F and trying to look for all various keywords, funding, money, support for maintenance, building things. So, like, I really wish that I had this service when I was serving over there, and then in my also a lot of my follow-on assignments, because you have to do a lot of that manually, and I wish I would had to be able to use Concord as a way to feed through these documents and look for
Listen,
all the
at least you had the
keywords.
control F.
Yeah,
You were actually able to do certain, but I didn't even have this 15 years ago, right? So
yeah,
it's really, but I think what you're describing is what I've seen over and over myself in my previous roles, or what I hear from our customers. It is fascinating, even today, when you look at the penetration rate of contract management system within
yeah,
companies. Today, about 90% of companies, 90% of companies have nothing in place. And so what do typically companies have today in place? They have some kind of an e-signature platform. So they will use
yeah,
DocuSign or something like this. And that's it. They still send the documents through Word, or sometimes it's slightly better Google Docs.
right.
And they will store that somewhere on SharePoint or Box or Dropbox. And so this is absolutely not efficient at all. It's also,
No,
not very cost efficient either,
no,
because you have
no.
3 or 4 different subscriptions to do this.
Hmm.
And the idea for us was to just bring everything in one single platform, so people don't have to switch on and on. And so yeah, so it's a common problem. It's happening to more companies than what people think. I'm always surprised sometimes, but to see some. We have some very, very famous customers. I'm not going to give any names here, but you'll be surprised to see that they have nothing in place before starting with Concord.
Yeah, I think they're listed on
You're
your
wondering.
website.
Yes,
Yeah,
absolutely. So
yeah,
yeah.
yeah, absolutely. Um, hey, please tell us about if someone wants to obviously learn more about this service. I think you have a number of free resources on your website. Please tell us about those free resources.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, you can simply go to concord.app. So it's CONCORD .app, app. And basically from there, you'll be able to get in touch directly with us. You'll be able to see a full demo of the platform directly on the website. We're very much of a transparent company. Our prices are on the website. You have the ability to talk to someone the same day, and you will get a demo and a quote. We can also give people access to a free trial. So we're trying to, work the way everyone should be working nowadays. I think the time of having to go through 4 or 5 calls with an SDR and a salesperson
Yeah.
just to get a demo and a pricing, I think is a
Right.
bit the last century. And so we're trying to do a bit different here.
Right, absolutely. And you guys have a blog, and you've got some guides and some webinars on the website that someone can continue to get more comfortable with the service, and
Absolutely.
also be able to help and guide while you're using the service. So,
especially for your audience, right? Because as I mentioned, a lot of our users nowadays are actually people that are like CFOs, finance leaders in general. And so we have a lot of content on how efficient contract management can really help their teams and their goals at the end of the day.
Right, absolutely. Hey, one of the things I wanted to ask you about today is you have obviously have taken a few organizations from the startup phase, and I really want to talk about and ask you a couple of questions around your startup leadership. Like, describe what it takes to lead a successful startup, from forming a team, communicating a vision, and really trying to lay down what kind of those expectations. It's a totally different environment than from what an organization that's already been around for a little while.
I mean, it's a vast question. I think, so I've been doing this for now, so that's my third company. And so I've done this for almost, I would say, maybe 20 years now. So, yeah. I think at the end of the day, what it really takes is intense resilience and commitment. Before, what's interesting about Concord, so we created Concord about 10 years ago now. And right before Concord, my co-founder and I had a previous company, contract management space also, in France at the time. And we failed that company. We crashed.
Okay.
We were bootstrapped entirely at that time. We released the first platform, had a few customers, but we started to see a lot of churn very quickly. So we failed. And what's interesting about this is that we failed for 3 or 4 years, and then after 4 years, we started to understand why really we failed. The answer was not always that obvious, but that's because we worked on that first startup and that we failed there, that we started to understand what we should be doing with Concord. And that's why we built Concord the way it is today versus what people were doing at that time, 10, 15 years ago. So what I mean by this example is you have to be okay to fail sometime for 3 or 4 years in a row,
right,
to be able to get to that light bulb moment when you're going to realize what you really need to solve for. And, that makes sense because if just having an idea like this was sufficient to build a company and to be successful with it, well, there will be a lot of companies out there, not a very successful people. And, sometimes I think the problem with the way successful entrepreneurs are telling their stories, they kind of tend to forget about these first few years of struggle and go straight to the result. And I think that's not what happened to us. Clearly, we failed on that first company, and then we were able to do this. And even when it comes to Concord, that app, right? It's not been a straight line. It's been some crazy acceleration and some plateaus, sometimes some problems, and you just have to keep going and keep going. And I think at the end of the day, it's really a question of commitment to your mission. I think, when I see people that are just want to dedicate 1 year to a project, if it doesn't work, they want to move on. This is not enough. I've committed 10 years of my life to Concord. That's probably another 10 or 20 in front of us. And so you just have to be okay with this. It takes time, it takes a lot of work, and it takes, I would say, also a lot of humility. There is so many things you don't know. When you are a CEO, when you are a founder, you are literally facing problems every day that you've never been confronted to. And so you have to be okay learning, be okay making mistakes, and growing from that. So it's not for everyone. It's a bit of a drug. Once you've tested it and you liked it, it's very hard to get away from, but it's not for everyone.
Right. So that in that initial phase, when you may be failing or you may be plateauing. How do you stay focused? How do you get your team aligned when you're going through those initial troubles?
Um, this is a very good question. I think especially because I worked in politics for Nicolas Sarkozy. I had the chance to see what someone who was running for president had to do to just mobilize people,
Right.
and get them to vote for you. Or
Mm-hmm.
so, what's interesting is I think at the end of the day, it's as the CEO, I think it all comes down to the vision that you have, and if people are aligned with this. I think that's really what matters at the end of the day. I think if you are, creating a picture of a service, a platform, whatever you're selling, right? That really makes sense to people, that really connects with them. And also doing it maybe in a way that can be different from what you see in the market. Then in that case, I think people will keep following you, even if things are complicated. I think that's really what it comes down to, right? Because, I work in tech, right? So
Mm-hmm.
I live in a world in tech there it's pretty easy to find a job, or at least it was until recently. And so, my developers, my salespeople, they could probably find another job pretty quickly anywhere else. And so why they're staying is because they believe in the mission that we have and the way we're building the company. And so what's interesting, I think, here is, personally, like I've had moments of intense doubt. I'd say like I have a clear vision and commitment, but there are days where I'm waking up and I'm like, we've been failing for X number of months or sometimes 4 years. What am I doing with my life? What
Yep.
should I continue? Um, but the good news is like when you have a team behind you that you are responsible for,
Mm-hmm.
well, you just keep pushing, you do your work, and usually after a few weeks or a few months, it gets better. I sometimes describe the role of a CEO, I guess, on the startup side, a little bit like what I would say. I think a lot of single mothers experience every day.
Okay.
Well, you probably have to work two jobs. You have to take care of your kids on top of this. It's
Yes.
very complicated.
Yes.
Finances are complicated.
Mm-hmm.
But at the end of the day, well, your kids are here, they count on you. And so you're going to have to smile when they're here and take care of them. And then when they go to bed, you probably cry a little bit in your kitchen. And the next day
Right.
you do this again. And
Yeah.
that's okay. That's just part of life. I think it's true of anyone in general. But that's how I would describe it. So you keep
Right.
pushing and the
Right.
team counts on you and then it's fine.
Absolutely. I think that's the heart of leadership. I think you nailed it right there. It's about giving that vision to your team, rallying them together with that common vision, setting that expectations, and then you're showing that strength during the day to get them going over the next goal, and then
It's
coming back the next day and keep going at it.
it's not absolutely, and it's nothing different. I mean, the military is exactly this at the end of the day. You're asking
Mm-hmm.
people to put their lives
Mm-hmm.
on the line here.
Right.
And
Right.
and the only way you're going to be able to do this is by making sure that they share the vision, what you're trying to achieve, and that they're going to believe in their leader. If and that the person's going to be there for them and making sure that they will have their back at the end of the day. That's really what matters. So, yeah.
Yep. Absolutely. So I'm also curious about your relationship with your CFO or the person that was responsible for your finance and accounting in the early stage. What was your CFO doing in that early phase when you're trying to get this off the ground?
Yeah, absolutely. I think at the beginning, first of all, when you're really starting, you don't really have a CFO, right? So
No,
you start to have
no.
a CFO when you have, let's call it a few $1 million
Yeah.
in revenue. Um, but the truth is, I have now I have an amazing CFO. She has been transformative for the company. She's been with us for probably about 2 years now, and we had CFOs in the past before that, but sometimes in a startup, you don't necessarily understand what a CFO should be doing for you, really.
Right.
It's obviously way more than accounting. When you're starting, it's not something that you necessarily have in mind, especially, we raise money with the different VCs. And so you're not really looking into every single dollar right away.
Okay.
I realize now that this was a massive mistake. I wish I had hired a great CFO like we have today way earlier in the company,
Interesting.
because
Yeah.
yeah, and that's with pain that I learned all of this. I think at the end of the day, even when you are a high growth company, even when you have VC money behind you, you should still be managing your company extremely seriously when it comes to your cost, when it comes to your projections and things like this. Um, every single company, when you start being a bit more successful, you probably don't look as much into your margins, and then eventually that will creep up on you. And so, it's a small things, but if you don't make an habit of renegotiating every single deal that you have with your vendors, if you don't make sure at the end of the month that you're really getting what you're paying for, then very quickly you're going to see this 10, 20% margin disappear, and that will hurt you very, very hard long time. So I think for me, for a startup, I would say, get a CFO the minute you probably are in the 2 or 3 million ARR. This
Okay.
is absolutely needed. Um, there is a cost, obviously, behind the CFO, but you will recover that cost so fast. I mean, I think my CFO, when we hired her, she probably paid for her salary in just 2 or 3 months of
Right.
running the business.
Right. Exactly. So
Yeah.
you were you doing most of the finance functions at the beginning? You're doing it yourself?
I was,
Yep.
absolutely, I was. And then quickly, we obviously had accountants, so, external parties to help us with all of this. But the truth is, you will never get from a third party the type of service that you would expect from a CFO internally. And I think it also here comes down really to the type of CFO that you hire. I think you need, at least for I see work very well, is you need someone that's going to be negotiating every single dollar. I think a dollar is a dollar. It's just a principle of this. You
Yep.
have to be behind this. And this is extremely key as a startup because, once again, you can raise money, but you never know when the next round's going to happen. You never know if you're going to face like a pandemic like we did during COVID. And so you should have a very strict control on these finances. And so that's, I think, the most important part for a CFO at the startup level is making sure your cost doesn't creep on you. And the second thing, obviously, is about the projections. We have the ability nowadays, especially with the way we use Concord for ourselves,
Yep.
to really have a clear understanding of what's coming forward. And that is helping us just make faster decisions, be just more agile.
Awesome. I love that. Hey, I also want to ask you a couple of questions. You've mentioned your CFO a few times. I do want to hear a little bit about how what are you looking for? You already mentioned about the negotiating for every dollar for all the services that you were receiving. What are some of the other things that you're doing, or what are you using from your finance teams to help you make better decisions?
Yeah. Obviously, aside from the accounting and the negotiation part, it all comes down to I would say ratios and different KPIs that help you
Yep.
exactly know if you're performing or not. So a simple thing here, but as many companies, we are focusing on getting more customers. That's just what everyone does. And marketing as a cost, right? And so the real question is, how do you know if your initiative in marketing are really paying off? It's a very complicated thing to do when you think about it. Marketing cannot attribute properly what comes from the different channels they have. And so you basically will rely at the end of the day, in part on your CFO to really understand your metrics here. So whether it's the sales and marketing efficiency metric, for example, this is the type of thing that we use to clearly see if we should invest more on a channel or in general with the different initiatives that we have versus just stopping. And that's the kind of thing that you can do nowadays because, thanks to online advertising, you clearly see the numbers very quickly. If you have a very good understanding, thanks to your CFO, for instance, of your numbers regarding pipeline and conversion, then you can make decisions faster based on leading indicators instead of lagging indicators.
Right.
And
Right.
yeah. And one thing that I would actually probably say about this is that um, I believe that a CFO is also here to bring you as a CEO data that you can trust.
Mm-hmm.
And what's interesting about the way we built out the finance function at Concord is that our CFO is also directly looking into the numbers coming from sales, coming from marketing.
Mm-hmm.
And I think this is important because at the end of the day, you probably want to avoid people self-reporting their own metrics.
Yep.
Because that's how problems start to happen. Because sometimes, sometimes you just don't know how to do it very well. Sometimes
Right.
you forget about it. Sometimes you only want to show the metrics that look better to your boss versus the other ones. So
Right.
I think the important target of the CFO here is you have these numbers, you can trust them. And that makes all conversation after that very easy. It is just about math. Are the numbers working or not? And let's make a decision.
Right, exactly. So you hit on a very good point. What we typically call the finance and accounting teams your trusted advisor.
Yep.
So the ones that are going to bring in that truth to numbers of what's actually happening around in your company, so that you can make better decisions, going forward. So I think you hit it right on, really perfect. So what types of conversations do you have with your CFO?
Uh, Lord, what type of question do I not have with my CFO? I
Yeah.
think at the end of the day, so my CFO is part of the leadership team. So first of all, she's involved in every single decision of the company. We tend to be very transparent and horizontal at that level. So she is literally part of every single conversation. But what I will talk about most of the time with her at the end of the day is really about projections. How are we doing in the different initiative? When you have your accounting, your cost control, etc., the processes in place, things are kind of running by themselves. So it's really more about how do we pivot the company moving forward,
Yep.
and how do we make things happen faster, typically. So that's really the type of conversation that we have on a regular basis.
Awesome. Very good. So I'm curious from your perspective as CEO, what specific skills would you like to see finance professionals develop? What are you looking for in someone coming into your company with the specific skill set?
I can only obviously speak for myself here, context of tech startup, etc. I would be a Fortune 500 CEO, would probably have a very different type of answer for you.
Sure, sure.
But I think, if I look over the last 10 years of the finance professional that have worked with us, what I think has been important to be successful in our company is, once again, that desire to fight for every dollar. I think this is key. And I think, this is the same thing that I would expect from a customer success leader. You fight for every single customer. You try. You don't accept someone to churn without fighting for it. I think it's the same thing for a CFO. You have to want to fight for every single dollar. That's the first thing. I think the second thing is trying to be a bit the guardian of the processes of the company, especially at a startup.
Yes.
A startup, you want to move fast. You don't want to have too many processes because they will slow you down. I hate processes. I think they're needed, but they're
Yeah.
evil, right? If
Yes.
everything were to work by itself, you don't need processes. It just works. So, but you do need
Right.
them.
Right.
And I think a
Exactly.
CFO is here for that. It helps you realize that, yeah, we can do this way, but this is what we're going to probably face very quickly if we don't make it a bit more smarter on the processes. So I would say the guardian of the processes and fighting for every dollar.
Okay. Awesome. Matt, you just mentioned really talking about your processes. I'm very curious about your monthly close process. How long does it take when you close the month, when you're at the end of the month, how long does it take for your finance and accounting team to close the books and get you the results for the month? How long does that take
Now,
usually?
as of right now, about 2 weeks.
Okay. Yep.
Um,
Okay.
yeah, about 2 weeks right now. But what's interesting here is really, once again, where we're coming from and where we are right now and where we're going next. So we used to not do monthly closing whatsoever. As a startup, you
Okay.
don't necessarily need it as much. So we used to do more quarterly closing here, and the quarterly closing would take us a month or two to get closed. It was complicated. So that was, what our investors required. It was fine. It was working well enough. But our new CFO, who joined us 2 years ago, was rightfully so, saying that, well, this is not okay.
Okay.
We cannot wait 5 months to know exactly how we're doing. We should
Right.
know right away.
Right.
And
Yep.
so she moved us to a monthly closing. Thank God, that was really needed. And as of right now, we are on 2 weeks window here.
Okay. Yep.
And the idea this year is actually to cut this down more to 3 or 4 days. So that's what we're
Perfect.
currently working
Yep.
forward. And
Yep.
the great thing about this is technology is getting better and better. There's a lot of things that can be automated now. And I think the ultimate goal, honestly, is that there won't be any more closing in the future.
You're right.
Everything will be done
Yep.
live. The concept of a closing is kind of wrong. Why do you need a closing every month? You could do a closing literally every day at the end of the day. So that's what we
Absolutely.
will
You
probably
you
do.
hit you hit it right there because the industry is trying to move to a day zero close. And the technology is getting better and better every day, especially with AI, being able to get those books closed, get those temporary accounts to where they're supposed to be, and get it closed, and get you financial statements and
Yep.
a little faster, and the information that you need as CEO a little faster. So I think you hit it right there. It's perfect. Hey, I've got another couple of questions for you. Particularly, early in this conversation, you were talking about the startup as far as you're going to have to fail a little bit. I wanted to ask you about success. What does it take? What does it take for a leader to become successful? Can you just walk me through that a little bit?
This is a very tough question because I think success is very different for everyone, right? I think it depends at what level. I think as a founder, success is going to look different from your leadership team. Um, so it depends on the type of success that you like. What are the type of success that I've seen typically overall? Well, there are people that are motivated by a mission. That's my case, for instance. I believe in contract management. Or personally, I think contract management sucks, and I think it should be done better. And so
Yeah.
that's the mission that I have. That's why this is our
Yep.
second company in this space, hopefully the last one. But that's the mission. It is not about the money. It is not about having, the power or recognition. It is really just making sure that we are solving that problem. But success for people is very different everywhere. So you got sometimes people are going to be motivated by the power, by the money, by helping people in their team grow. And so I think the biggest problem that I see here quite often is not the type of success people are looking for, but more the misalignment between what they're looking for and what really is important for them. And I think, you know, sometimes people tend to chase the wrong thing.
Mm,
Money is a good example of this. Or career, we work crazy hours until we're middle aged, like I am now, and at some point you end up in a midlife crisis because you realize that you've been chasing the wrong thing.
right.
So I think the right way to be successful is just really understand what is important to you and then really try to go after that.
Right. No, I like that. I like that. You were telling me earlier about an interesting hobby that you have. So please tell me about a favorite hobby that you have of yours.
Yeah, absolutely. So when you don't find me in my company working every day, you will find me several weeks during the year doing whitewater rafting. So I'm a tech CEO, but interesting enough, I actually kind of hate technology. I think it's very useful, but I think it's very nice to be able to disconnect from it entirely.
Sure.
And so I typically spend anywhere between 4 to 6 weeks a year just going down rivers in the US or other places in the world and camping on the side of the river for a couple of weeks. So I was last year in between the Yukon, Canada, and
Oh, nice.
Alaska on the Tachinitchi River. It
Hmm.
was a great trip. I had the chance to do the Grand Canyon in the US. I was a couple of years ago. I was in Chile, in Patagonia over there. So that's how I typically recharge my batteries is by
I
being
like it.
very far away from the internet and my cell phone and my computer, just being in nature.
Awesome. Very good. So again, like to hear. What's next for Concord? What do you have on the horizons for the service?
Yeah, absolutely. I think probably 2025 for us is, I would say, the one of the most exciting years that I've seen for a long time in the company. It kind of feels like the early days. The reason behind this is obviously all the progress that you see right now with AI. AI has changed literally everything in our industry and other industries too. But it means that what used to require a lot of work from people, entering data manually, there was no other choice in the past. This is over. So you can get your contracts done and then immediately you have all the information that you need from that. And so what's very exciting at Concord is that we've been working on this for quite a while now, and we are releasing this year basically a new version of the app that is just entirely AI first. The idea of the future of contract management is not about giving you more ability to put fields everywhere in your documents, is to actually remove things from your plate. And
Mm-hmm.
so, when it comes to let's take an example of a contract, for instance. When you want to sign a contract today, well, you're going to input your data of your customer, how much the person's going to have to pay, and you're going to have to maybe format your document, etc. This is over with AI. I don't think anyone moving forward is going to format a document. Why are you spending time choosing if it's to be bold or italic or a different font? I think the AI should be doing this for you.
Yeah.
Why are you entering fields? I think the AI can probably put the fields in there for you too. Why are you reviewing the document? The AI should be able to do that and flag the things that are really important for you instead of having to do it article by article. And that's basically what we're building right now. I believe the future of contract management is not this complex user experience with a lot of data everywhere. It's to be able to get you that power, but with the simplicity. And so Concord moving forward is going to look more and more like ChatGPT, basically, where you can really have a conversation with an AI to get you the result that you have. So you don't have to build reporting yourself by selecting every single field that you want to appear in there. You'll be able to just ask the AI and get your reporting done.
Awesome. Hey, please share the website address again.
Concord.app.
Concord.app. Awesome. Matt, thank you so much for joining me today on the Finance Leader Podcast. I really appreciate your time. I think you've shared some amazing information and nuggets with the audience today. And thank you. And I wish you the best of luck with you and your company going forward.
Thank you. It was my pleasure.
Thank you so much. Now, wow, that was a wonderful discussion with Matt. There are 3 lessons I want to highlight before I close. Number 1, I have worked with contracts for decades, but I learned so much listening to Matt explain the contract process. The use of AI is going to change how we manage contract requirements, due dates, terms, everything. It will be exciting to see where Concord goes in this industry. And since business is essentially contracts, how we track and conduct our business with AI will be important to monitor. Pay attention to contract management. Number 2, Matt's thoughts on startup leadership are critical. He talked about the need for a CFO in the startup phase and when to bring them on. He told us to fight for every dollar and for accuracy in order to make better decisions. Continue to analyze and negotiate your costs. And finally, number 3, regarding monthly close. I really liked Matt's thoughts on monthly close by using AI to eventually establish a day 0 close. The idea is to work through close during the month with the expectation that accurate financial statements will be available the day after the month ends. The quicker we deliver accurate financial information to decision makers like Matt, who is the CEO, the better positioned your company will be. Now, please visit Concord.app for more information about Concord. The link will be in this episode's show notes along with Matt's link to his LinkedIn. Thank you again to Matt for joining me on the podcast today. I hope you enjoyed the Finance Leader Podcast. You can find this episode wherever you listen to podcasts. If this episode helped you today, please share with a colleague. Until next time, you can check out more resources at financeleaderacademy.com and sign up for my weekly updates so you don't miss an episode of the podcast. And now, go lead your team, and I'll see you next time. Thank you.